Good morning and welcome to the TPN POPI-Portal training for schools, module 6 of 7. We're going to be running through the operations function today. As always, with me in studio, Jade Matembu, who is going to be facilitating for us today. She is going to interrupt me, hopefully while I speak. If you do have any questions, please feel free to populate that in the chat. Remember that you need to log into YouTube to be able to access the chat and ask those questions. You're more than welcome to do so right now. Remember also that we are going to have a formal Q&A for 15 minutes after the session, in which we will be answering more technical questions, or if they're not necessarily context-based on what I'm busy going through on the system, Jade will ask me those questions thereafter. So please feel free to utilize that service. Remember also, if we don't answer any of your questions, or you might have questions afterwards, please feel free to send an email to legal@tpn.co.za. Jade's going to put that in the chat for us right now as well as if you need assistance through the POPI portal and help with that, remember you can use the help desk email address. That's helpdesk@tpn.co.za. Thank you very much for putting that up on the screen. Also, if I do seem a little bit blurry today, remember, go down to the cog at the bottom of the screen, select 720p or higher, and you will be able to see me properly. I see that's happening on the screen as well. Great. Okay. During the 15-minute Q&A session, we will also be sending through our feedback forms and that feedback bit.ly link. Please click on that and fill out those feedback forms. Not just important for our own feedback, but obviously for you, if you'd like different training specifically for schools on POPI, you're more than welcome to populate those feedback forms in that manner. And remember to hit like and subscribe on the TPN YouTube channel. If you've subscribed to the TPN YouTube channel, maybe you'll be a subscriber, you'll be able to access our channel directly through YouTube. But also, if you click the notifications bell, any new training that is upcoming or anything that we've scheduled on YouTube will populate for you in your notifications, and you'll be able to access that directly through YouTube as well. Luckily for all of you joining me today, schools aren't going to close. It looks like the Department of Education has put up a notification this morning, regardless of the rumors that we most probably heard over these last 5 days or so. Schools are not going to be closing. So lucky for all of us, and hopefully throughout the session we can really get into some POPI compliance, and we can get into accessing the system and utilizing the system. For all of you who are joining me this morning who do not have access to the TPN POPI portal, remember that is available directly through the TPN shop. You can go and purchase that for the price of 920 Rand excluding VAT, and you're going to get access, including VAT, and you're going to get access directly to the POPI portal, which is going to include everything that I'm going to show you today on the screen. Jade's also going to put that link up for us to the TPN shop if you're not already a subscriber. If you are, you can follow with me. You can go through your own operations function this morning and see exactly how I answer those questions on POPI while we're busy going through it. Good. So let's get started directly on the system itself. So as you'll notice, I've got my main screen up right now. This is the TPN POPI portal system. This portal obviously provides you with a personal information impact assessment, as well as doing a lot of different functionality for you through your entire POPI compliance journey, including all the policies and procedures that you can access directly through the system. You can download them, you can change them the way that you'd like, you can go and input the school's logo thereon, and obviously read through the policies and go and change them up the way that you would need to for full operational implementation at your school. To just show you one thing first, remember you can go into your settings tab on the left hand side and just make sure that your school is set up correctly. This is going to be done initially when you purchase the system and you log in for the first time with your username and password, but remember to set it up correctly, whether your school be private or public. You can see I've set this up as a private school. We're using our case study once again when we're going through the personal information impact assessment. We've set that up accordingly. Company size is 30 employees with around about 200 learners or parents. Now, I did this during the last session, so if you missed out, you can go back and re-look at that through the TPN YouTube channel. They have been allocated in different segments, so you can go into the TPN POPI portal for schools, go and have a look at training 5 of 7 that we did. We did go through new functionality on the system, but I just want to reiterate those today because there have been a couple of changes since the last training on module 5. So, First things first, you'll probably notice that we've got this new training tab on the left-hand side. The training tab, once you go and click on that, you can go and schedule training as well as use it as an online register for your attendance on the training itself. I've already inputted a training session into our trainings tab. It's called POPI Staff Awareness Training. You can go and edit that as well as just add a new training session should it be necessary. I'm going to show you how to do that now, but once you click the add button, it's going to open up a page that looks similar to this. You can go and input the name, the description, the source can either be internal or external, the awareness level. So it's either awareness or comprehensive training that you can provide. We've set it up as awareness that your information officer needs to do at the school. The duration is single day, the status is active, and the event date has been set for the 28th of May. You can obviously also edit staff and add staff that is going to be part of this training session, as well as what they've done during the training session itself. So you can see it's in progress. We're busy doing that today, but you can go and change that to completed, or if the person did not attend, you can use it as an online attendance register for those training sessions. Obviously, to add staff into the system and to be able to add all the different staff members to the training register, you need to go and click on the staff button on the left hand side so that you can access and input new staff members on the system, whether they be tasked with performing certain of the sub functions and answering the POPI questions on your personal information impact assessment, or even if you'd like to link them to your meetings, which I'm going to go through now as well, or to the training, you can go and do so. You'll notice that the only person currently on the system is myself, so it makes it a little bit easier when I'm filling out all of these different sections. So we've gone through the training tab on the left hand side, as well as staff. The other things that I just want to show you is the meetings, notes and action plans and how that has changed. I'm going to get into the action plans and meetings once we do go into the sub functions that we're going to be discussing today, which is student records, enrollment and external communications. But just to show you, you can now go and link your action plan or your action as well as your notes to a specific sub function. I'm going to show you that functionality right now, but let's first get into the meetings tab on the left hand side. New functionality, once again, you can go and schedule your meetings directly through the system to add staff members to the meetings, etc. Let's go and edit this one that I have put up. Staff meeting on retention and destruction policy and procedure, which I will be discussing during the personal information impact assessment. Click on the edit button. You can see it's added by myself. Staff meeting on retention and destruction policy and procedure. The participants is me, but you can add different staff members there if you've allocated staff to this function. The meeting time, the time that it starts as well as time that it ends, and it is active. Now, once I click the start recording button over here, any new note or action that I go and add during the recording phase will be automatically allocated towards the meeting. So if there's anything that comes up during the meeting that you need to do or make a note on, you can do so directly through the system itself, so that you've obviously got a register of everything that you need to do for POPI compliance. Now, action plans and notes, if I go and click on that, the new thing that has been added already, I've already added this morning, implement retention and destruction policy and procedure. Once I click edit on that, you'll notice that it's under operations. The sub function which has been newly added is student records, so you can add those actions directly to different sub functions. Task priority is high, the status is in progress, percentage complete 50%, and the due date, as well as the linked persons and the action that you'd like to perform. So it's all very simple now, but like I said, with your meetings and your notes, you can go and add them directly to the actual sub-function while you're busy with the sub-function, so that you don't need to go out between your actions or your notes. You can just do them directly through the personal information impact assessment while you are busy. There's one new functionality that I do want to show you, but I need to go into the personal information impact assessment to do so. So let's get started with the formal training session today, specifically looking at student records, enrollment, and external communications. So we're consistently, as you see, adding to the system itself. As soon as we get recommendations and we see things start to work around with the system, we go and add different functionality to the system through our development team. So once I click impact assessment, we've done this a few times. Like I said, you can go and re-look at the previous videos directly off the channel, but click on overview and you'll notice what we've completed already. The different functions at the school is going to be your governance function, your finance function, your human resources, information technology, operations, legal, which we've already completed, and sales and marketing as well. For today's purposes, we are going to go into the operations function. So we call all of these functions, and everything that filters down from the legal function or the operations function, we call these sub-functions for today. So on the operations indicators, we can see that there are certain sub-functions already allocated. Administration, student records, enrollment, re-enrollment, enrollment affordability checks if you're performing any credit checks on prospective parents, perhaps for exemption inquiries. You can go and do that, and you need to go and complete this on your personal information impact assessment, because remember, you're processing a lot of personal information there. Communications internal, so internal communications for the school, external communications, and then property maintenance and facilities. Now, I'm just quickly going to go into property maintenance and facilities, because for some of you, this might not be relevant in your POPI portal. So let's say, for example, you're not busy processing any personal information through property maintenance and facilities at the school. You can go and click on the review button right over there, and you can go and mark this as not applicable. So if you don't want to do the personal information impact assessment specifically on the sub-function, you can go and mark not applicable on that one. It's going to open up a block that looks like this for me, and then just click yes if you are sure you want to continue. Now it's going to mark this sub-function as not applicable, and you will not be able to complete it. So it's going to say it's 100% complete, obviously as a result of you not processing the personal information, but it makes it quite simple. We had a number of schools contacting us, both myself and Jade, asking, listen, yeah, some of these sub-functions is not really applicable to the school. We don't perhaps have a EXCO or a MANCO in terms of our governance function, so you can now mark those specific sub-functions as not applicable. Very simple and easy to utilize. But let's just get stuck into this right away. We're going to go through student records, like I said. We're going to go through enrollment, and we're going to go through your external communications right over there. You can see I've already started. I didn't want to type this morning. I was a little bit lazy. Actually, it just makes things a little bit simpler because I type very badly on screen. So let's go into your student records. Click the review button to go into that sub-function. This normally contains sensitive information about pupils, students, and may contain sensitive information regarding any medical conditions. So we're already giving you a little bit of a parameter here when it comes to student records. So what we can already see here is that we're going to possibly be processing a high volume of personal information, but it might be containing some special personal information there already. If you're new to this training session, don't worry. I'm going to show you how to define those terms that I've just spoken about directly through the system. So select the accountable person. It's going to be me. The progress status is in progress, and the due date, let's just make that day for today and click save. The personal identifiable information, and you'll see with a number of these conditions, or rather questions that we ask you, we've got these information tabs on the right hand side that you can go and click through, and it's going to open up a wiki tab for you. I'm just going to run through a couple of these that relate to the personal identifiable questions. I do have a few of them open as well when it comes to the questions that you need to ask yourself for full POPI compliance, but let's just run through some of these information tabs already. The ones that always come up, the ones that we get questions on, is obviously personal information, special personal information, and GDPR information. I'm only going to do this once. I won't reiterate during the session again, but just click on these wiki tabs and it's going to open up that wiki link for you. So let's have a look at personal information. So sensitive personal information is information that can identify the data subject, so it's an identifier with possibly a name. This can include information such as the data subject's ID numbers, bank account details, telephone numbers, tax numbers, etc. Then the second one that I just want to show you is special personal information, because this is most probably going to be contained in your student record sub-function. So if I click through on that record, it is going to say what special personal information is. In terms of section 26, special personal information includes race, pregnancy, national, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, physical or mental health, Very important here because in terms of your student records, you might be collecting health records. Religion, conscience, belief or culture, medical histories, criminal histories. Once again, medical history is at the forefront here. Biometric information, possibly. Trade union membership and political persuasions. The last one that I just want to go through on your personal information tab is the next one on GDPR. Just so that you know, we do have a different question. If you're processing information on European citizens or residents, you need to obviously go and click this because you're processing information that falls under the GDPR or the General Data Protection Regulation that applies to European Union citizens. So everything quite simple through the system and explanatory. So going back into my personal identifiable information, I can now answer these questions. The volume of personal information being processed with your student records, possibly quite high. Our case study selected high. Does it contain sensitive personal information? Yes, it does. Does it contain special personal information? Yes, it does. Does it contain information regarding children? Now remember, in terms of section 35 of POPI, there are certain different conditions attached to processing information of children. One of the big ones that does come up is consent by the competent person, which is going to be the guardian or the parent of that child. So if you've gotten consent, obviously, once again, in terms of section 535, you can process the personal information. Just a stopping point, a little bit of a segue right over here. It's important to include POPI clauses into your application forms as well as the contracts that you're signing with the parents. And this can already be done. You can input those clauses to make sure that the processing of personal information is done lawfully. So it contains information regarding children. Yes, it does. Does it contain personal information on European citizens? And our case study selected this. Yes, in this regard, they do process information on European citizens. Then click Save. System where the personal information is stored. I've already filled this out for us. It's on the server. It's both paper and electronic, and the level of access control on this is high. And also on the control measures. Our case study already filled this out for us, so it's quite easy, but they have policies and procedures in place, checklists, electronic, as well as physical access control. Now, dealing with the important questions, we're going through the 8 pillars of lawful processing in terms of POPI. So these are once again those important questions that set out your behavioral risk, how you're behaving in relation to the Act, which I'm going to show you right now when we go through your inherent residual and your behavioral risks once you've completed a subfunction. So is the processing of personal information taking place lawfully? Quite an interesting question. There's a lot of information that you sort of need to take in when answering this question yourself. But once again, we've got that information tab over there. It's going to talk about the 8 pillars of lawful processing in terms of POPI. And just to run through those once again, let's click on that wiki. So in terms of POPI, the 8 pillars of lawful processing of personal information are accountability, processing limitation, purpose specifications, further processing limitations, information quality, openness, security safeguards, and data subject participation. So quite easy. Those are the 8 pillars. You need to be answering questions on these as well. The next wiki that I did open up is specifically for consent and when consent is required. In terms of section 11, there are going to be certain exclusions, which is if the processing of personal information is required to conclude or perform a contract. The party processing the information is required to do so by law. The processing protects the legitimate interests of the consumer. The processing is necessary for the performance of a public law duty, or it is done in pursuit of the legitimate interests of the responsible party. Now, in terms of your processing, obviously, it's important and necessary to have the information of both the parents as well as the children in terms of your contracts, and you need that information to process, perhaps to send out invoices, etc. So some of these might fall into this first category of it is necessary to process the personal information for a contract. So please keep that in mind when answering the questions. Going back into the TPN POPI portal, let's run through all of these questions itself. So, is the processing of personal information taking place lawfully? Remember, this is directly focused on the sub-process of your student records. Yes, our case study selected that. Is the processing of personal information done in a reasonable manner? They also selected yes on that one. Have you applied the rule of minimality, so you're not collecting more information than is actually required? Yes. Is the collection of personal information being done for a specific and explicitly defined purpose? Yes, it is definitely done. Have you obtained the consent of all data subjects? Now remember what I told you in terms of section 35 of the Act, you do need consent from the parent or the guardian to process information on the children. Our school selected yes for this question because they've already asked for those consents through their application forms or through their contract. So they said yes and select save. Remember, when you click the save button, you're able to go out of the portal or go into a different action or meeting or training, and you can go and allocate those, but the system is going to save that for you so that you can go back into the sub process and complete where you left off. Do you notify the data subject as required by POPI when collecting personal information? Yes, the school selected. Has the retention and restriction of records been formalized in this area? Remember, I added that action already to the system, saying we need to finalize, we need to implement, we need to give staff training on the retention, destruction, and policy and procedure. So for our school, they selected partially on that question. Is personal information in this area used for another purpose? They selected no. Have you ensured that personal information in this area is updated? They selected yes, they do so on a yearly basis. And are you satisfied that the appropriate security measures are in place? And our school selected yes on this question as well. Now, once I click the save button, it is automatically going to save that for me, and I can go back into my personal information impact assessment and see how I've scored for the sub-function. One of the other functionalities that has been added to the system is right at the bottom over here. I'm going to do something strange. I'm going to move out, and I'm going to show you that there is a little blue question, or rather frame, right at the bottom at my right knee. Once you go and click on that, it is going to allow you to add actions and notes directly into the sub function from here. So you don't actually need to go out of the system to be able to do so. It's as simple as clicking on that blue little button right at the bottom, and you can go and add your actions and notes directly through the system. Makes it simpler because then you don't need to exit. So say, for example, for myself, I added that we need to take the action to implement the retention and destruction policy and procedure. You can go and add that directly to this. You can see that it's already been implemented through the system. I've allocated it to the sub-function so that I know specifically for the sub-function we need to have a look at the retention, destruction policy and procedure. So easy as that, just new functionality on the system. So when I go out of this and I go back into my operations function, we can see that we have finalized my student records. We can see that the inherent risk is high. The reason for that is because we're obviously processing a high volume of personal information, and it does contain some different categories of personal information that I need to go and have a look at. The residual risk is low. That's a result of all the control measures that I've already got in place. And the behavioral risk is also low because I've answered all those POPI questions, the 8 pillars of lawful POPI questions, in the affirmative, saying that I am complying with the different provisions of POPI with regards to student records. Now, the next two I'm going to run through quite quickly, but I'm going to show you how enrollment works as well as your external communications right over there. First things first, let's head into enrollment. Same process, click on review, and you can go and fill that out. I'm going to select myself. Progress status is assigned, and we're going to say due date once again is today. Click save. Volume of personal information processed in this function. Remember, we're looking at enrollments. So enrollments have a lot of personal information that we're processing. Let's read through this. This is the enrollment process for new students. This can be done electronically on paper-based applications or via the relevant Department of Education. Generally, this enrollment process will include a large amount of personal information for both pupils, students, and parents, guardians. We've already talked about that in student records when consent is required, so keep that in the back of your mind when you're completing this sub-process. So volume of personal information being processed, once again, it's high. Does it contain sensitive information? Yes, it does. Does it contain special personal information? Our case study selected no. There wasn't any special personal information that they are adding into this processing during the enrollment phase. Does it contain personal information on European citizens? Yes, it does. Oh, sorry. No, it does not. And click yes. System where personal information is stored, already filled this out for us. It's in the server and the DMS or data management system, whatever you're utilizing, go and fill that out. Paper and electronic, both, and the level of access control is high. The control measures in place, once again, policies and procedures. They do management review on enrollments. There's checklists, electronic access control, physical access control, as well as staff training on these enrollments. And once again, dealing with the 8 pillars of lawful processing questions. Is the processing taking place lawfully? Yes, it is. Is the processing of personal information done in a reasonable manner? Yes, it definitely is. Have you applied the rule of minimality? Yes. Is the collection of personal information being done for a specific and explicitly defined purpose? Yes. Have you obtained consent? Yes, we have, and click Save. Next questions. Do you notify the data subject as required by POPI when collecting personal information from them directly? Yes, we do. Has the retention and restriction of records been formalized? Once again, partially. Has not been completed in full. Is personal information in this area used for another purpose? No, it is not. Have you ensured that personal information in this area is updated? Once again, they do so once the enrollment goes through. Remember that processing then filters through into the different functions of your business. So you're only most probably going to use this enrollment function once. Are you satisfied that the appropriate security measures are in place? And we selected yes. And remember to click Save. Once again, just scrolling through this, if I go into the Operations tab, we can see that it's been updated similarly to what we had on student records as a result of the volume of processing, the different categories of information, and how we've answered those questions. Once again, a higher inherent risk, low residual risk of the control measures, and then behavioral risk in terms of POPI also low. Now, the final sub-function that I want to go through with you today is the external communications. Lots of questions on this one that we've had through the legal email address as well as help desk. Once again, just to let you know, we're going to put up those details again. You can contact us directly through legal@TPN or helpdesk@TPN. So let's click on the review button over here. External communications is the transmission of information between an organization and another person or entity in the company or school's external environment. Examples of these include customers, potential customers, suppliers, investors, shareholders or learners, parents, governing bodies, and society at large. The method used to share information may include many platforms, for example, email, paper memos, newsletters, magazines, WhatsApp, and other messaging platforms. So we're going to see how the school's external communication works with this and how they've answered the questions on their POPI compliance. So accountable person, going to select myself again. We're going to say this is in progress, and the due date, once again, going to select today. Got a lot to do today. Personal identifiable information. So the volume and the categories. Let's have a look at that. The volume of personal information being processed in this function. An interesting question when it comes to external communications. Because possibly, yes, you are sending through communications by email, by WhatsApp, by other, let's call it messaging services, perhaps through your DMS itself, your data management system. You are utilizing certain communicators, perhaps to communicate with parents. Now, inherently, you might not be sharing a lot of personal information on these channels. It's not like you're sharing personal information on the specific students, their identifiers like email addresses, telephone numbers, ID numbers, address information. So it's very possible that through the external communications, unless you're logging all of those things like we've discussed on sensitive or special personal information, you might be processing quite a low volume of personal information, except for the email addresses and the telephone numbers and all of that you've got saved on your database that you're obviously using to contact the prospective parents or other suppliers, etc. So our case study took this into consideration, and having a look at their enrollments as well as their student records, they selected that they are processing a medium amount of personal information. Does it contain sensitive personal information? They selected possibly yes, it might. Does it contain special personal information? No, it does not. Does it contain information regarding children? And remember, it could be an instance that you might be sending through a name of a person that has won a competition or did well at school, but that's just the person's name. It identifies that specific party, yes, but it's not linked necessarily to a identifier like an ID number, a person's address, a person's telephone number, email address, etc. So, does it contain information regarding children? Our case study in this instance selected no. Does it contain personal information on European citizens? And they also selected no on that question and clicked save. The information and where it is processed. It's a system where personal information is stored. Fill this out for us already. I'm glad I don't have to type this. social media, messaging applications, and our email servers. Is it paper or electronic? It is only electronic for the school, and the level of access control they've actually selected as low in this instance. Control measures that are in place, both policies and procedures on how they treat the information on their data set, as well as the external communications and how that's processed. And there's electronic access control on those records as well. Once again, the important questions for processing in terms of those 8 pillars. They said, is the processing of personal information taking place lawfully? Yes, it is. Is the processing of personal information done in a reasonable manner? Yes. Have you applied the rule of minimality? Yes. Is the collection of personal information being done for a specific and explicitly defined purpose? Yes. Have you obtained consent? Yes, we have, through our application as well as contracts, and clicked save. And then the final data usage questions, we're going to run through these quite quickly once again. Do you notify the data subject as required by POPI when collecting personal information? Yes, we do. Has the retention and restriction of record been formalized in this area? Once again, partially. We're about to implement that. It's 50% done. Is personal information in this area used for another purpose? No, it is not. And have you ensured that the personal information in this area is updated? Yes, we do so on a yearly basis. And are you satisfied that the appropriate security measures are in place? And they also selected yes to that question. Once the save button's clicked, same process, go into your operations function, scroll down to what you've done, and you can see, interestingly enough, changes have occurred. Inherently high risk, that's most probably as a result of us processing a medium amount of information, but it perhaps containing sensitive personal information. The residual risk is medium as a result of those control measures in place that we have inputted, not necessarily a lot of controls, and the behavioral risk is also low. So this shows us that with the external communications, even though we might not be processing as much information through the system as we are with our student records or with our enrollment, the control measures, security measures, as well as the volume of personal information being processed, even though they're different, could give you a different result. And you need to go and have a look at this to perhaps implementing different security measures, perhaps other policies and procedures, as well as some other control measures to make sure that this information that you're processing through the sub-function has been done correctly in terms of POPI. Excellent. That is running through the new functionality as well as the operations function through the system. We've gone through the different sub-functions, external communications, the enrollment, and student records. Jade, I believe we can go into the informal part of our training session today, the Q&A. If there are any questions, please go right for it. Otherwise, you can obviously input the bit.ly link for the feedback forms in the chat right now as well.
Thank you, Peter. The feedback form has been made available, so please do click on that bit.ly link. It does appear as if our schools are quite clued up on POPI. We don't have any questions at this stage.
I hope they clued up. It's not just a Friday. But if we've got no questions for today, we're going to end off there. Remember those contact details that you can utilize to send us any communication through. Ask us about the POPI portal. If you've got any legal queries, please use the information that we've provided for today and use the channels of communication that we've included for you today as well. But for all of our viewers, thank you so much. Great training session. Hope you have a fantastic weekend further, and thank you very much for joining us.